I'm locked up. They won't let me out. Locked up.
The use of isolation in this country violates international law. It violates the Convention Against Torture. It violates the Convention on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, because most of the folks we find in isolation are folks of color.
Amnesty International, the Nobel Prize-winning organization that monitors human rights abuses around the world, issued a report in June 1987 condemning Marion, the first time the organization has ever condemned a U.S. prison. Amnesty concluded that Marion's policies appear to violate the United Nations standard minimum rules for the treatment of prisoners. In fact, Amnesty went so far as to send to the director of the Bureau of Prisons a copy of another of its reports entitled Safeguards Against Torture. It added that conditions at Marion, in their totality, amount to cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment.
I mean, some of the conventions and the various treaties that exist at the international level, we are and I may mash this up, but we are basically a signatory and not a true party to, meaning that we subscribe to these in an aspirational manner only. They are not the laws of the United States. Now, in order for a particular convention or treaty to become the equivalent of a federal statute, the United States Senate has to ratify that particular treaty to say, yes, we want that body of international law to apply just the same extent as if we passed a statute ourselves. And the United States has not done that with respect to many of these conventions, particularly the ones against torture.
I think it's unfortunate that in American courts we don't talk about torture. Torture is defined in very specific ways in international human rights agreements. The United Nations uses the term torture. The United States courts don't use the term torture, and every time I testify about an Eighth Amendment violation, I mention the international standards and the concept of torture. It's basically the same as an Eighth Amendment violation, that is, subjecting people to cruel and unusual punishment.
What Jay was saying made me think of the term cruel and unusual punishment. We all have heard that, right? Cruel and unusual punishment. That's supposed to be illegal in this country, right? You can't have cruel and unusual punishment. So a lot of people ask me, why, when I'm talking to them about the control units, they say, why don't you challenge the control units in the courts as cruel and unusual punishment, right? Then we shouldn't be able to get rid of the control units. Well, the problem is that they have been challenged. And it turns out control units are cruel, but they're not unusual. And you can't win on a cruel and unusual punishment challenge unless you meet both criteria. It has to be cruel and it has to be unusual. Control units are so rampant in this country, they're clearly not unusual, so it doesn't really matter that they're cruel. Whether or not we can prove that they're cruel is kind of irrelevant. We can't win on that battle.
When you raise those types of claims in court, they get kicked out immediately. When you raise those types of issues in the court of public opinion, it grabs people's attention because, we are on an international crusade right now to spread freedom and liberty throughout the world. That's the current doctrine that's being practiced, and it's a farce. It's an absolute hypocritical farce, because the reality is that we treat prisoners just as we treated prisoners at Abu Ghraib every single day of the week, whether it's in Texas, New York, California, or elsewhere.